Well, gents, I've been waiting for over a year. I've been waiting 14 months to shoot this video. Let me explain to you what's going on here. I called this gentleman. I first saw videos and pictures of this over a year, almost a year and a half ago. So I reached out to Robert and I said, hey man, I really am digging what you're doing there. Can I get one of these meters to take a look at it? And he goes, well, okay. And he kind of built this for his own little experimentation purposes. He'd being an RF engineer and working in transmit stations and stuff up in Canada. He wanted to make a little bit more accurate kind of digital setup that he thought that he might be able to use at work. So this is version 1 that we have sitting in front of us. I asked him, I said, so if I go do a YouTube video on this, how many of these do you think you could make, manufacture, or produce a month? And he goes, about 10. And I just went, oh God. My fear is that I'm going to overload this guy, right? I'm deathly afraid that I was going to overload him. He goes, but I'm working on version 2. He goes, this is version 1. Version 1 here, it requires a great deal of manual labor to assemble. It's got a lot of components that need to be soldered on the board. He's manufacturing each one 1,000% by hand. Very time consuming version 1. Version 2, he's streamlined the process. The boards are pre-stuffed and there's a lot less assembly work. And then he's trying to expand on this meter. And I said, well, okay, send me a meter. Let me take a quick look at it. But I'm not going to do anything with it because I don't want to put you in the position where your phone just decides to go into meltdown mode with people trying to reach you, trying to order this meter. Let's wait until version 2 comes out. So he sent me over the meter. I pulled it out of the box, took a quick look at it, and I'm like, man, this thing is really freaking cool. Its assemblage and construction's really neat. So when I open the package, what I get out of the package is this unit plus the charge cable. Now he also sent over, this has got a blue-green display in it. This has got a monochromatic version 1 display. And he says if I want to change out the display, to please feel free and tell him what I think. So he sent me this little handwritten note. Hope you like it, Luke. Don't be afraid to tell me if this is a piece at POS. Robert, P.S. I put in the gray version of my display in the box. I prefer the dark one. Let me know what you think. We'll come back to that. So when you open it up, this is what you're going to get. It comes with an 18650 3500 milliamp or 3.5 amp hour battery. This is it. It's got a fuse, got a couple disconnects on it. Each one of these windows is for different things. It's got a safety interlock in it over here. You can manually set it for 30 or 100 UA. Let that sink in for a second. This will work on like a Bird 43 or the Bird meters for, let's say, I don't know, a 3-inch line section or so. For those of you that are watching that don't know, this style of line section here, this little starter kit line section that's right here, uses 100 UA meter movement pickup. Anything past the Bird 43 uses 100 UA pickup to drive the meter. The meters are 100 UA, except in the land of coaxial dynamics where they're all 40 or 30 UA. That's where Bird and coaxial dynamics differ. The elements here that go into this line section are completely different than the 6-inch line sections, different than the 5/8 line sections. But the meter is set up to facilitate both the 30 UA meter movements and the 100 UA meter movements. This one, version 1. You can also do it manually through the menu in the front. I'll come back around to that. So let's jump back in time 14 months. So I tell him, cool. He sends it over. I pull it out of the box. I take a quick look at it. I'm like, man, this thing's badass. And I set it down and completely forgot about it. So what brought this back to my attention as I was talking with some of my friends, and I said, you know, there's a guy out there that's got a digital meter right now. I've got one sitting out in the shop I haven't even looked at it yet. And they said, well, why not? And I said, because he's supposedly coming out with a version 2. Well, that got me thinking. So the next day, I called up Robert. Ring, ring, ring. He's like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, hey, what are we doing? Where are we at? I'm waiting on version 2 because I wanted to do a video on version 1 saying this is where he started from. And then I wanted to be all like, and here's version 2. He's still in the research and development portion of version 2. I've had several people that are really super smart come along and talk to me about doing a digital bird meter. We had one guy that we gave a bunch of money to, and it never worked out. What it was is that the phenomenon, we'll say the phenomenon that I see a lot is really smart people. For some reason in their brain, they have no ability to set a finish line for themselves, right? So version 1, you'd say, okay, I'm going to make myself a digital meter and I'm going to overcome all the hurdles to be able to pick up all the different voltage measurements, and then I'm forward and reverse, and how do I make it so I can make it more accurate? No, it's got to run off a battery, so how do I do the battery? How do I make it chargeable? How do I come up with a plan? How do I come up with a print? They get all that figured out, they put it together in one thing, boom, we have a finish line product. We're at the finish line, we've reached, okay, now we've got version 1 completed. Many smart people, no matter if you say to them 15 times, man, I just want the digital meter scale to move linearly. I don't care about any of these other things that you're coming up with. I just want the meter to move linearly, like nice and smooth and be accurate with a bird meter. They will not pay attention to that finish line point, that is what you're saying. This is my finish line. This is where we need to be. They go down this rabbit hole of, man, I can make it do this and I can make it read more accurately, and we'll put a digital multiplier in it. And then we can make it so it reads all these different line voltages, and we'll make it so it reads all these different board temperatures, and we'll make it do this, and we'll make it do that. And they start building the space shuttle. When all you need to do is make it read accurately and make it so that the user interface isn't overly complicated. A lot of really smart people, they get themselves too wrapped up, and they build the product bigger than it needs to be, right? And they don't have the ability to say, okay, on V2, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that the meter is easier to set up. It's a little bit more to make accuratized. We're going to make it so the charge port's a little bit different. And maybe we'll put an SD slot in it so we can do software expansion and say, okay, that's version 2. And then version 3, when I get to version 3 point, we'll put on that list, okay, we're going to make it so we can do voice to text for the speech. We're going to make it so it's Bluetooth capable. We're going to make it so that, we can add auxiliary probes to it. We're going to make it so it's got an auto shut-off button on it. We're going to make it so it's got a light sensor on the front of it to change the brightness of the display so we can conserve battery. We're going to give ourselves a Bluetooth battery. Here we are 14 months later, and he shared with me what he's working on. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I said, well, brother, how about I just go ahead and send you back this meter? I don't own this, right? This was sent to me on loan. So I've sat on it in the box for 14 months. And he goes, nah, it hasn't been that long. It's only been 4 or 5 months, right? And I said, no, bud, no, no. It says right here, 5/8. And it says over here, when it was shipped, right over here on the side of the box over here. I gotta cover up his information. Date again. It's like, no, bud, man, we've had this now for a long time. Like a long time. Oh, shoot. I think that he's overreaching on version 2, but if he gets version 2 running, which there's no doubt that he'll get it done, V2 is going to smoke the crap out of this. But I said, well, man, let me send this back to you. He goes, no, keep it. Or give it to somebody that's going to use it. And I said, well, I'm not going to give it to anybody. I want to test this. I want to hook it up and I want to test it. I want to play with it. I want to use it. But I've been waiting on him. So he's like, no, get the video out there. And I said, okay. It's the BBI effect. I'm telling you, if I do a video on this, the whole world's going to start messaging you about it. So we'll see. I'm putting this out there as a disclaimer about, so you know, this guy is a young man and he is incredibly intelligent. Like, incredibly intelligent. So I'm just putting it out there. That's where we stand with this. All right, let's get ready to put this together because I want to start playing with it. So if you go to steamingcoax.com, he's got a full-blown, with color, 31-page instruction manual with a 14-page expansion manual to that on how to assemble this. He says, step number 1, remove analog meter. This is accurate enough for all of us, for the most part. This is going to take us to another level on the amount of watts. This meter I got out of a giant pile of meters that I bought out of a place out of Phoenix. And it had a broken meter movement, so I wasn't able to resell it. So it's just been sitting here, and I thought, oh, well, I'm going to put it to use. I'm going to use this case. So we removed the manual meter out of the back, which on a Bird 43, as we all know, or some don't, so we're going to pretend like not everybody knows everything, right? You remove these 4 screws, okay? You're going to take the back off. This is your back plate. Take the back plate off, take your screws, put them in a bag. If you don't put them in a bag, you're going to lose them. You're going to disconnect the 2 wires. This is your center conductor and this is your ground that come off the back of your manual meter movement. Once you get the 2 wires off, move them out of the way. You're going to undo this screw and undo this screw here and pull the meter straight back and then rotate it and it'll be able to come out. Now, according to his instructions, we reassemble this in the opposite direction. So first, we disconnect the charge port. And by the way, I tip my hat to this young man because he understands what Celastic is. It's the little details that really impress me here. The plug is Celastic encoded in the back. Look at that. Runs the wires, solders and connects them, and then puts Celastic to support the connection. So we don't want to just pull these apart, you know, like this is plugged into here. We don't want to yard this apart. We want to support both sides of the plug. Then we should be able to just simply, up, down, here we go. Simply take this, insert down at an angle, and rotate around and drop into place. You see how easy that was? You cannot drop this straight in, but he's cut this in such a way to where it should just rotate in and sit down. Now we want to manually start these threads. This thread here, manually start this thread over here, and do it by hand. This is not the place where we get out your Roy Effie, your DeWilty, your Mill Fricky, and drive these home by hand. We don't do that. You got the appropriate size screwdriver. We're going to thread this into here by hand. Visually line up the holes and thread in by hand. According to the manual, that's what he says to do. All right, let's do the other side. It's not super over tight in this because it's not necessary. And our fitment is damn spot on. Look at that. It's in there nice and solid. It's not coming out. That's really slick looking. Okay, so we're going to take our extra coax. We're going to coil this up in the back. We're going to back off our 1 screw or a nut, back off our other nut, and we're going to go to hot. I'll bolt that down. Your center conductor is your positive, by the way. We'll manipulate this around and get it underneath the 2 washers for the ground. Nope. See, me and my big old fat fingers. I might need to get my hemostats out. I'm going to need my finger cheaters. All right. So we got that started. Let me get my nut driver out. We'll tighten this up. So the charging port is USB, standard USB. And to put this in place, we come from the outside, we thread in. I am a right-hand kind of guy, right? So all my other Peak kits and stuff, all the accessory ports, even though this doesn't do anything other than charge, give us a charge port, I'm going to put it on the right side. So now we will see if we can turn this. Yep, perfect. God, look at that. Perfect fitment too. Oh man, that's in there tight. That's in there quite tight. That's kind of cool. So that's in, twist this down, lock it in place. We'll come around on the inside. And we'll simply plug this in. Just like so. Now up here, like a professional, this thing has been sitting on the shelf for 14 months. Have not charged the battery, haven't nothing. Literally pulled it out of the box, and this is the way it came to me. We'll pull the tape out, the insulating tape, and now the 18650 is charged. And this is in line, in play. And this is no cheap 18650. This is a good little battery. It's neat. Really, I applaud this young man for taking this on. And I say young man, I'm only in my 40s, but this guy's way younger than me. So to finish up, we just reinstall the back. Like so. Stuff our coax back up underneath the lid and put our 4 screws in. I'm going to leave the back off because I'm going to sit here and play with it. Whoa! Drop it on video and break it before you even get to show it off. Right on. Let's turn it on. Look at that, battery's half charged. What I'm going to do is get out a USB charger. We're going to charge the battery up. I'm going to sit down and read the instructions, and I want to learn how to set this up so I can teach all of you. Man, that's pretty looking. Isn't that pretty looking? I think that's pretty looking myself. So I just plugged it in. Got red indicator here, no indicator. So I'm assuming either when the battery is fully charged, the indicator light's either going to turn green or it's going to shut off. We'll find out. So where we left off was I had this thing plugged in and we were waiting to see what would happen with the LED here. If it would turn green. It turns blue. And the reason I got it plugged in is because I've spent the last 2 days tiddly farting around with this meter. I'm in love with it. So this is version 1. Well, immediately I turned it on and I started playing with it and I started putting pictures out on Facebook about this meter, and the internet caught on fire, which is good. These are good things. But the number one comment I got was, there's no more of these for sale, so what's the point? Well, the point is that he sent this to me 14 months ago, and he's just now getting ready to do version 2. And version 2 is in the last stages of production, right? So he's gonna get one, then he's gonna send me one. We're gonna sit there and totally fart around with it for probably a couple weeks, probably do some software tweaks, and then he's gonna be ready to put it out in the market. So he has started, and I thank him for this, he has started a waiting list. He will not take any money from you at all until he's ready to ship the product. So all he needs from you is for you to go and fill out, hi, I'd like to have one. Because apparently his email box, he's gotten 200 plus inquiries in the last 48 hours over me just putting some pictures up on Facebook, and primarily all on Patreon. The guys on Patreon have a pretty good idea how this meter works by now, just by me simply putting pictures up and reading their webpage, reading his webpage. But version 1 and version 2 are going to have a lot of things that cross over, and I just want to talk about quickly how to work with the interface on this thing, And I'm just going to say that it is, I got to be careful what I say here. This thing is absurdly accurate. And it is as accurate as you choose to try and make it. This unit and version 2, the one that's coming out. You will need nothing to make this work. And if you want to try and make it more accurate, which you can do on your own, you're going to need multiple elements. Each element has a variance in it of 10%, 14%. So there is going to be a little bit of data drift, and that's just simply because of the sampling tool that we're using to pick up the information with, right? So let's start with just turning the meter on. Now I've kind of set the meter up a little bit for me to use. We have our up-down arrow indicators and our enter indicators. The first thing I'm going to teach you is how to reset the meter. Press and hold enter, and it says stat reset. Everything has been reset back to 0. The next thing I want to show you is the menus list. So right now, as it stands right now, for you to change elements, you have to go element, enter, and then arrow to which element that you want. When you get this, everything is going to be auto defaulted to 100 watts. Okay. Now I've set up the most common elements I use, which is 5, 10, 100, 1 kW, 5 kW, and 10 kW. As we all know, this line section cannot handle anything more than about 10,000 watts on the average. It just can't. Let's go back to menu. This measure function is how we're going to go about getting the information presented to us. The reason I had to wait a couple days is, one, I ordered the programming tool that looks like this, and I followed the instructions on his webpage, and I updated version 1 here to the latest software patch. And it allows us to have this function, which is peak mode. Okay. So do we want to do peak hold or temp peak? All right. If you select peak hold motion, what that means is whatever the maximum amount of signal that goes through the meter, it's going to count up and just hold that. This mode was not available in the original software that was in this meter. He's added it to version 2, which is going to be a much easier interface also. In version 2, what I suggested to him is that we want to make it as easy as possible for the end user to be able to change from element 1 to element 2 to element 3. So in version 2, what we've done and what he's created is you press enter, and then you just press hold enter, and then you start scrolling up and down, and it's going to allow you, so it'd be enter, up and down, and it'll allow you to immediately go, it'll take you immediately to this element, it'll immediately take you to this window, and then you can just arrow to whatever element you want. So we'll start off at 100 watts. Hit enter, you can tell you're going to use it, using now, menu, menu, menu. You see how big of a pain in the ass that was to change elements? In the next version, you're going to hit enter, arrow down to the element you want, release enter button, and you're going to be on the element. So we've eliminated all those button pushes. This is not only designed for a Bird 43. This is designed for the rack mounted and also into the commercial industry. So it gives us the ability to read 250,000 kilowatt. We'll never be able to read it with this meter, but the menu function is there. So like I dropped a picture of this thing saying 100,000 or 100 kilowatt, right? The other thing that we're going to change is this measure here. Let's see, unit, enter, we'll go watt, enter, watt, menu. There we go. So we're looking at the meter and we're seeing that we're on the 100 watt scale. We're counting watts and we're reading an average mode. So we hit enter again, or no, we do the arrow button. See how this is blank? That now means peak. And then we have our deviation, and then the minimum amount of signal that it received, and then the maximum amount of signal that we received. Oh, pardon me, this, I just lied to you. This means instant. It's reading exactly instantly this second. I'm going to show you all this in operation here in a second. So then we have deviation, we have minimum, and then we have maximum. This would be our peak mode. Max would be peak mode. I think he's going to change that to read PEP. I don't know. We'll see what version 2 brings. This, to me, is very groundbreaking, that this is one, incredibly accurate. And you can take multiple measurements with multiple different elements and create your own plot chart and go in here and change the linear scale that the information is displayed from if you wanted to. But out of the box, what he did is he took 10 elements, laid them down on the table, and then took measurements at different power levels, and on a plot chart created an average plot chart so that we have, I think, a 2 or 3% variance or less on an overall average. If I take this 100-watt element, and I take this 100-watt element, and I put, that's 1,000-watt, here's the other 100-watt, here it is. These two 100-watt elements, one is for 2 through 30 and the other one's from 25 through 60 megahertz. But these were both born on the same day. They were made in the same batch, and they were made just for me. These things are about 4 or 5% different. I'm going to show that to you here in a second. But what he did is he got 10, the exact same element, ding, 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 put the exact same amount of watts through each one of the elements, measured how they read here, measured how they read here, and then measured how they read on a professional scope, took the power reading, and then he created the plot for all 10 of those elements through the entire arc of the element structure. And that's what he created the metering plot for this off of. This is 100 times more accurate than the analog, because now we're adding a decimal point and 2 zeros, so 10th, 100th. It's accurate. 1 watt, 10th, 100th, okay? Very, very accurate. Now, I like my analog meters, I really do. I'm gonna probably slide this on to where it was once 3 is now probably gonna turn into 4. Whoever made that comment on Facebook, you got it dead on. The reason I need to do that is I need to get you guys comfortable looking at this, right? LP100, amazing unit. Larry over at Telepost, he's my friend, and his wonderful wife. Love them to death. This is a different animal, because this integrates with everything that we already have. The price for this is going to be about 250 bucks here in the United States, and it's like $360 in Canada, you know, because the Canuck isn't what the dollar is, but then the dollar isn't what the pound is. I mean, it is what it is. It amazes me how many of you guys didn't read. I put this picture up of this unit and people went to his webpage immediately because it's right here, steamingcoax.com. And it's not stream, it's steaming, as in like the coax is getting so hot that it had snow on it, it's melting, it's steaming. The coax, okay. You guys didn't even notice that he's got it at 330 or 360 Canadian in parentheses and right next to it American, okay? This is not that bad for the price. It's just not. It's not. You look at the price of an LP100A, and then you look at the price for the replacement of the analog meter. The new analog meter price at the time of filming this, I think, is close to $180 just for the element, the meter itself. Not the whole meter, just the analog portion. And they're not made of heavy-duty Bakelite anymore. And the meter backs are made of plastic, and the faceplate's made of plastic. They're not made of glass anymore. So they went from being like $80, $90, and they've doubled in cost. And then we look at this, $50 more, and you get a whole lot more flexibility. You can utilize the multiplier technology. Like I can take this 100-watt element and make it read up to 900 watts. Let's get into that. So let's say you get your new version 2 and you decide that you're going to go and you're going to set up a new element. So we'll go over here and we'll say element number 7, which isn't assigned. I left that open for a reason. You can see how that's 100 watt. We'll say enter into this one. We're going to edit. We're going to enter in that again. Here's your multiplier. So if it's 100 watt, we can do 150 watt, 200 watt, 250 watt, 300 watt, 350, 4, and so on, all the way up to 9.5. And then it starts over. It took me a second, and I actually had to sit down and read the web page. If you hit enter again while you're in the same menu, now you get this new window. It says magnitude. 10 watt, 1 watt, 10, 100, 1 kW, 10 kW, 100 kW, and then 10 milliwatt, 100 milliwatt, 1 watt. That's a pretty small measurement. But in some places in the RF world, this is necessary, right? Okay, so let's say that you've got a 2500 watt slug. Okay, we're going to say enter, edit again. So you've now got it dialed up for 1 kW. Well, how do we make it read 2500 watts? 1 kW times 2.5, enter. 2.5 kW, enter, use, now in use, back to menu, 2.5 kW. So now this reads just like a 2500 watt. So if you put a 2500 watt in here, instead of there being a full deflection, it just allows you to read up to that number. Each element will allow you 100% over what the element reads. So if you have it set on 100, let's say, the meter will read up to 200 watts before it says out of range. There's one other little hiccup that you have to do. You have to go down to measure, have to go into enter, and then you're going to go into units. Okay, enter into that. And now we're going to tell it kilowatts, milliwatts, watts, dBm, dBW, and dBu. Those are all your different windows of measure. The only problem I have found, and I'm hoping that he'll make this an automatic, so we don't have to come back in this window unless we're expressly wanting to access the dBm, dBW, and dBu, is that it's an auto range thing. So once you set up the element, you don't have to go back and tell it it's what we're actually measuring in. So if you have it set in milliwatts, let's say milliwatts, and then we go menu, menu again, it's going to give you this out of range function because we have it set up for 2.5 kW, and it's going to say out of range. So we have to go back down to measure, hit enter, and then we're going to go to units, and then we're going to go to kilowatts. Enter, menu, menu. Now we're good to go. That's how you get to all the oddball elements. The 5, the 25, if you have a 25 watt element, the 1500 watt elements, which are very rare, the 2500 watt element, which isn't all that common, but it's still out there, the 25 kW, the 10 kW, the 50 kW, all that kind of stuff. That's how you go about setting up your element, right? One other thing that you want to do is whenever you're done changing anything, you want to save. If you don't save and you shut the meter off, when you go to turn it back on, it's completely forgotten what you just entered into it. Element, enter. See slot number 7? Now reads 100 watts. That make sense? Okay. This runs off an 18650 3500 milliamp or 3.5 amp battery. With the display at full brightness, this has 150 hours worth of operation time. If you take the display, enter, and we'll say backlighting, enter, and we turn this down to half, which is 4. Still totally readable, right? Menu, we go to contrast, we go to enter, we turn that down by half, still totally readable. Okay, we're going to jack it back up for the video. And we're going to go back to backlight. We're going to jack this back up because, well, I don't care. Daddy don't care. Burn them electrons. And we'll tell it to save. Enter. Yes. config saved, menu. If you turn the brightness down by half, this goes up to almost 400 hours of continuous use without any supplemental input. And yes, you can plug this into an external power supply and have it in use function. And then it's indefinite. It comes with this jack. I think version 2 is also going to come with this. This allows us to plug into the back, and you can just let this hang out of one of the side access ports. The center is hot. Of course, the outside is ground, and then you can plug this into a 12-volt source. There is a menu option for that internally. 100% of the time, you are in control of everything this thing does. We'll scroll down here to supply. Do we want to do direct? Do you want to run it off AA's? Do you want it off 12-volt lead, the lithium, or do you want to set up something custom? The custom portion is in the instruction manual. I don't think it's necessary for me to cover that today. Interlock. This thing is cool. It's got an interlock function in it that you can tie off to another relay that then in turn you can tie into a transmitter for transmitter cutout. I think I've already covered that. We're not going to come back to that. Meter select. It's kind of neat. Save, and then the build info. It's 2023 version, steaming coax, firmware options, and so on and so on. It's a display. Menu. Let's see, there's something else I wanted to show you guys. Oh, that's it for now. You can reverse it. Personally, not a fan. And then there is an analog display in here. I don't remember how to get to that, but it does allow us to have a little needle that goes. It's kind of a guessing game. Let's start here. So let's go to element, enter, and we'll start off at 100 watts. We're going to tell it to use, in use now, menu, menu. Menu. And because we got it set up for kilowatts, if we want to get this the most accurate that we can, we're going to go to measure, and we're going to go to units, and we're going to go down to watts, menu, menu. Now we're all set up. Like I said in version 2, all of that setup is going to be literally enter, arrow down to whatever your element is, and then you're done. You don't have to do any of these other setups. My whole goal is to try and get you guys to think about maybe upgrading to this and taking a look at this, and I cannot wait for version 2. It's not too far away. It's going to be literally within the next few weeks. So what's the harm of shooting this video? Because version 2 is going to kick the snot monkey right out of this. All right, let's get some meters hooked up and let's play with it. Before we start showing you the power reading and everything, I want to show you guys this function here real quick. Currently set up for 100 watt mode. This is the digital display. I wanted to show you this real quick. We go into measure, and then we go down here to view mode, and we go to analog. Now we've got more of a traditional Bird 43 coaxial dynamics meter movement scale. The downside to this scale is there's just not enough pixel density for you to be able to get a really solid number scale like what's on a Bird 43. So you just have to know that that big hash mark is 50 watts, 100 watts, 150 watts. And he's got it broke down in 25 watt element or increments, which is perfect for me. But I think most people are going to end up using it in the digital mode. Digital, enter. They're going to end up using it just like this. Version 2 is going to be so much more streamlined. We've taken a lot of the menu button selection out of things, or at least he will. For us to be able to, like I was saying, change elements, it's all going to be auto. So we just be able to press the enter button and scroll up and down. And as far as the range control goes, all we're going to tell it is the dBm motion, or you're going to tell it to read watts, and it's going to auto plot everything else for you. So going forward, know that a lot of the unit measure that I'm having to put in here A lot of these button pushes are going to be completely irrelevant on version 2, but I'm showing it to you so you understand how to operate this meter in case you know, like I said, there's like 20 something of these out there floating around. It's kind of a roadmap because we all know that this meter is going to become legacy, right? This thing will probably get set on the shelf, or I'll probably just give it away. I'll probably do some kind of raffle through the Patreon page and I'll give it to one of my Patreons, okay? When version 2 comes in, just saying. All right, let's hook this up. Let's make it read some power. Okay, so we've got the make many watts device hooked up, and we're going to use a radio. We're not going to do any modulated stuff till the ends of this thing. I feel that people are like, well, it's not good data points. First off, let me show you the difference between the two meters. Let me get you over here so we're perfectly square. Okay. As we both know, the camera can play tricks. If I move the camera to the right or the left, I can make this one look a little bit more or look a little bit less, right? So we're straight on. We'll key up about 100 watts. We're not quite at 100 on the analog meter. So there's dead on the money roughly on the analog meter right at 100. On the digital meter we're at 98.69. Let's go ahead. I'm going to reach in here. I'm going to unplug this 100 watt element. I'm going to take this one out and stick it in here. Then I'm going to take this one from the other meter and stick it in here. And I want you guys to see the difference in how the two meters read. We're not changing anything else. This is the one that was in the analog. The analog went from here, digital went over there. Look at that. Now they're reading almost dead nuts on the same. 1/10. How we got there is just by simply moving the meter elements around, our slugs. Have to keep that in mind, that this thing is so accurate that it's going to show us the little bit of deviation between the elements. That's the problem I run into all the time with these two 1000 watt elements. I had to order 10 1000 watt elements. This is the one that always sits in the peak, and this is always the one that sits in the average, or bird, whatever you want to call it. Whatever you want to call it. Meter. I had to order 10 of those to get two that were within like 2% of each other, and that's what I've got. It's very, 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 very accurate. It takes a little bit of counting for it to get there in the average mode. So now we'll change modes. This is instant. That's how fast it's reading and updating. Now, can you get useful knowledge from that? Not really, no. So now this is the peak meter side. See how it's counting down to 0? It's going to hold it for a couple seconds and then let it go back down. We'll turn the linear off, and we'll turn off the mic gain. Hello, audio. 68 watts, max. Average. This is hello, instantaneous. Minimum. This is our peak meter. This is going to change. How this is programmed right now will change into version 2. Hello, 1, 2 is what it is. I don't care what scale we put this on. It's dead nuts. I mean, it's dead nuts. And this is right up there with the LP100A. The reason we have to keep bringing up the LP100A is because it was, in my opinion, one of the first into the market. I did a video on it many years ago. I've done several over the years. I've got one mounted up in my Suburban. Never had a problem with it. Runs fantastic. Like I said, this is a different kind of animal. So now we're going to go and we'll look at it on the average side of things. So now we're going to measure this meter against that meter. Let's see where we end up. I have not done this test myself yet. According to the digital meter, that's right at 100 watts. According to the average, it's about 95. And remember, now we've just added another level of variation into it, which is the meter movement itself, right? So we'll switch those two elements around. Now they're reading spot on with each other. Isn't that odd how that works? So now when we take this thing to the stop peg, let me turn the mic gain down on the radio. Go ahead and roll this on up to the stop peg. That's the stop peg on the analog meter, is plus 20. So that's what it looks like when we're plus saturated 100%. But we've exhausted our ability to read here. We're still able to read right here. So we'll back this down. Pretty straightforward, right? I think it's pretty straightforward. My biggest critiques to him have been just a couple little small software changes that I'd like to see implemented. And what I mean by software is just menu. Had to lay the menus out a little bit more efficiently that I feel, me personally, will be beneficial to all of you guys out there in YouTube land. You know, how to interact with the menu, how to make it quicker and easier for everyday use. Either it be a CB radio operator, ham radio operator, somebody in the commercial field, the professional application. We want to be able to have certain options that are right at our fingertips and not have to be menu. I don't know about you guys. I owned this radio one time. It was an ICOM 7000. Still own it. Love the radio. It does amazing stuff. Does a whole bunch of shit. But to adjust the power on it, it's menu, rotate a knob, menu, another knob, menu, push button, menu, and then you can turn the power down. I don't know who wrote that. They should have been kicked in the head by a mule, right? It's the second number thing. Like you want to be able to turn your power up and down and turn your mic gain up and down all within one button push. That's how I feel about the ease and the flexibility that we should be able to have to jump between element sizes. The mode function is literally one arrow. So what are we looking at? Our deviation, our minimum, our maximum. The maximum is really cool. And like I said, in the menu, you can go and set this up so that all it does is it reads up to the maximum and then holds it. Hit enter, resets it, and it goes back to 0. It doesn't matter what I put in this for an element size, it's going to read. So I don't need to do anything more than 100 watts. I'm telling you, it's going to read. The fact that you can jump between the 30 UA and the 100 UA meter movements, and this will interact with every kind of watt meter measurement device that we have from the big two, Bird and coaxial dynamics. And allows you all the functions of the big boy meters in the coaxial dynamics and Bird ranges, where they've got the transmitter cutout, the oversaturation, the protection, all those circuits that are in it, all from inside this one little case. I personally think this is some really groundbreaking, really cool technology. Version 2, he is adding a bunch of expansion stuff that I can't even really get into any of it because it's not real yet. All we can deal with is this here. What is real? The new meter is coming, I swear, within the next couple months. So if you're interested in this, go get on the waiting list. He'll send you an email back, okay, I'm ready to deal with you now. That's your time. If you don't respond back to him, he's just going to move on to the next person on the list, and then we'll wait to hear back from you, kind of thing. Version 2, I'm really looking forward to sitting down and working with him to test it. I cannot wait to shoot the instructional video on it. It's going to be completely USB interfaced. The main thing that he's struggling with right now is well, not struggling, he's just working on the code for it, is he wants to make it so that it's got an audio output so you can plug it into a computer and your computer will tell you what you're doing for watts, either it be audibly or with a bigger display. Well, definitely audibly. We'll have to see what he's going to be able to do. If he's going to be able to do an integrated display. I don't think he's going to be able to get that in version 2, but still. There's a lot of room for growth. This guy is very young, he's highly motivated, he's incredibly focused, and a very disciplined young man. So I think that we can put our trust in him to actually develop the product. He's got himself a finish line in the sand, so he knows when he gets here he needs to stop. He needs to get things into production, and then the next version is going to be version 3. This is version 1. It's at the end of its arc. He only built like 20 of these units, 30 of these units, I think. Version 2, he's planning on mass manufacturing them. He's setting himself up to be able to ready to pump these out. Bing, 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 bing. The production process is set up for it. The board design is set up for it. He's not hand printing these by, like, this is completely hand printed on a 3D printer at home. He's gone and embraced the suck, I guess would be the best way to put it, and he's ready to start moving forward. So if you're interested, go hit up my homeboy at Steam Coax. Gentlemen, thanks for watching. If you got any questions that I can field for you, which is going to be very limited, I'll probably just end up referring you on to him. Please feel free for you to call. On that note, I want to say thank you, Penna, XS, Siglant, McMahon, Bird, Coaxial Dynamics, and Steaming Coax. Thanks to the Patreon supporters that make all of this possible. Thank you to the Patreon supporters that are allowing us to be here without any ad content in the middle of this video. And a big thanks to every single one of you that showed interest or wanted to be involved. I really honestly feel that this is a great product for everybody to start thinking about getting. I think everybody's going to have a good time with it, and it's going to be, well worth it. Appreciate it, gentlemen. I'll see you. Click.